Workplaces are meant to foster collaboration and growth, but in this story, obsession and anger transformed a routine day into a nightmare. What unfolded was a story of unreciprocated fixation and devastating consequences. For one employee, resentment grew into rage, culminating in a moment of unspeakable violence. In the tranquil town of Lewisville, Texas, what seemed like a routine workplace grievance erupted into an unthinkable tragedy. Amid the hum of office life, simmering tensions over minor workplace habits spiraled out of control. This shocking act forever shattered the peace of a quiet community, highlighting how unchecked emotions and personal conflicts can escalate into devastating consequences. Inside the unassuming logistics office in Lewisville, Texas, 51-year-old Tamhara Collazo was a beacon of warmth and professionalism. A seasoned employee, she navigated her workdays with a steady rhythm. A brief lunch break, a few casual exchanges with colleagues, and then back to her desk. Yet, amidst the camaraderie, her light-hearted nature made her well-liked by most, but it wasn't universal. One colleague viewed her habits with growing disdain, a fixation that would spiral into a tragedy no one could have foreseen. Among the dissenters was Merrill, a 35-year-old co-worker whose world revolved around discipline and efficiency. With a reputation for his rigid work ethic and solitary nature, Travis found Tamhara's light-hearted demeanor and regular breaks grating. What began as quiet grumbles during coffee breaks soon turned into a brewing storm of resentment. To him, her so-called unauthorized breaks were not just unprofessional, they were a personal affront. His annoyance transformed into an unhealthy fixation, clouding his judgment and setting the stage for an unthinkable act. In Travis Merrill's mind, Tamhara's routine breaks were not harmless workplace habits, but a deliberate slight against him. Each time she stepped away from her desk, his resentment deepened, transforming his annoyance into an obsession. What began as subtle irritations soon consumed his thoughts. He started documenting her every move, meticulously tracking her break times as if building a case against her. Repeated complaints to management only seemed to fuel his fixation further, as he convinced himself that her actions undermined both workplace order and his sense of personal justice. While most of the office brushed off Travis's relentless complaints as overreaction or mere nitpicking, for him, it was far more than that. He saw himself as fighting a personal crusade against perceived injustice, every moment of Tamhara's absence from her desk adding fuel to the fire. Tamhara, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing within him, continued her routine, greeting colleagues, sharing smiles, and taking her usual breaks. Travis sat rigidly in the HR office, his frustration palpable as he voiced his grievances. His hands gripped the edge of the chair, his jaw tight with anger. "Why does she get to walk around whenever she wants?" he demanded, his tone accusatory. "It's not fair to the rest of us. We all have deadlines, and she seems to take breaks on her terms." His words hung in the air, filled with resentment, as the HR manager tried to diffuse the situation, unaware of how deeply Travis's frustrations ran. The HR manager leaned back in her chair, exuding calm authority despite the tension in the room. Her voice was measured as she responded to Travis's heated accusations. "Travis, we've gone over this already. Tamhara's performance consistently meets our expectations. Her breaks, as you call them, have no measurable impact on the team's productivity or deadlines." She paused, her gaze steady, hoping to quell his frustration. Travis's voice grew sharper, his frustration spilling over as his intensity rose. "Expectations?" he repeated, his tone dripping with disdain. "She's cutting corners, taking extra time while the rest of us are left to pick up the slack. How is that fair to those of us who actually follow the rules? People like me work hard and don't get away with this kind of behavior, so why should she? His hands gestured emphatically, his words a mix of resentment and self-righteousness. The HR manager maintained a professional demeanor, her tone neutral but firm as she responded to Travis's escalating frustration. "Travis, she's not breaking any rules," she said, her voice calm but definitive. "This is a matter of personal routine, not misconduct. We've reviewed her time management thoroughly and it meets the company's standards. There's no reason to escalate this issue further." But Travis wasn't listening. His mind churned with a sense of injustice, drowning out the HR manager's measured response. Each word she spoke felt like a dismissal of his concerns, a refusal to acknowledge what he believed to be glaring inequities. The frustration he harbored swelled into something darker as he stood abruptly and left the office, his grievances unresolved. Travis's frustration with Tamhara's breaks festered into a dangerous obsession. What began as complaints about her schedule grew into an all-consuming fixation. He would watch her every movement, his eyes narrowing with judgment as she took her breaks, often whispering his grievances to colleagues. Each friendly conversation she had, each step she took away from her desk, felt like a personal affront to his need for control. For Travis, it was no longer about work. He felt a deep, uncontrollable need to make her understand the wrong she had done. One Wednesday afternoon, the quiet tension that had been simmering for weeks within the office finally boiled over. Tamhara, blissfully unaware of the storm waiting just around the corner, returned from her usual lunch break. Humming a soft tune, she stepped into the office, her friendly nature as radiant as ever. But Travis, whose anger had festered all morning, was watching. His emotions were a dangerous cocktail of rage, entitlement, and delusional justification. At precisely 1:15 p.m., the long-anticipated moment arrived. As Tamhara entered the building, he sprang into action, ambushing her in the hallway and shooting her multiple times. Cold, calculated, and fueled by an obsession that had taken over his mind, Travis ended her life in that moment, right in the very space where she had worked for years. As Travis fired, chaos erupted throughout the office. Employees screamed in sheer panic, scrambling to find shelter from the violence. Some dove beneath desks, others rushed toward the nearest exits, hearts racing with terror. The deafening sound of gunfire echoed through the hallways, shattering the calm and turning the workplace into a scene of unimaginable horror. Fear swept through the air, every corner of the office now drenched in the shock and disbelief of what was unfolding before them. The familiar, safe environment had instantly transformed into a nightmare. Tamhara collapsed to the floor, her life tragically slipping away in mere seconds. The brutal nature of the attack left everyone in the office in stunned disbelief. She had been a familiar, warm presence, a colleague who brought lightness to their days with laughter and friendly chats. Her sudden and violent death was an unfathomable shock. The office, once filled with camaraderie, now stood as a silent, broken space, echoing with the weight of what had just occurred. The loss felt personal to every employee who had known her. When the police arrived, they quickly arrested Travis, who offered no resistance. His demeanor was chillingly calm, his expression devoid of remorse. In the interrogation room, he confessed to the crime without hesitation. His justification was disturbingly warped. She was a parasite, taking advantage of the system. Someone had to stop her. His words revealed the depth of his delusion, showing how his resentment had spiraled into a violent obsession, completely detached from any sense of reason or reality. The investigation revealed the disturbing depth of Travis's obsession with Tamhara's work habits. His delusion that her routine justified his violent actions had consumed him entirely. While colleagues had noticed his increasing frustration, no one could have anticipated that it would escalate to such a horrific degree. The community, reeling from the shock, struggled to comprehend how such a tragedy could unfold. Tamhara's colleagues and friends were left shattered, struggling to comprehend the senselessness of the tragedy. She had been a valued coworker, a supportive friend, and a beloved member of the office family. Her absence created a void that no one could fill. Travis, now facing severe charges, would have to confront the consequences of his violent actions. Yet, even if justice was served, it would never bring back the life he had so brutally taken. The weight of his crime would haunt everyone involved forever. Tamhara's family gathered in mourning, a sea of grief and disbelief surrounding her as they reflected on her life, her kindness, work ethic, and the way she had touched every person she met. Each tear shed was a reminder of the deep void her loss left behind. In stark contrast, Travis sat alone in his cold, sterile jail cell, his life shattered by a split-second decision that could never be undone. His once-ordered world had crumbled in the wake of his violent outburst. This tragedy underscores the fragile balance that exists in human relationships, particularly in high-pressure environments. One life was violently taken, a community forever broken, all because one person's anger spiraled beyond control. Obsession can cloud reason. Unchecked, it has the power to destroy. In the end, no matter the outcome of the trial, the scars left by this senseless act will linger, a reminder that unchecked anger and obsession can lead to irreversible consequences. Tamhara's absence will echo in the hearts of those who knew her, while Travis's life is forever defined by a moment of madness that no amount of regret can undo. This story sheds light on the growing issue of gun violence in the United States, sparking critical questions about workplace safety and gun accessibility. It compels us to ask, how do we prevent such tragedies? Should stricter regulations be in place to ensure that firearms don't fall into the wrong hands? As communities grapple with the aftermath of such senseless violence, it's a reminder that addressing these systemic issues is not just necessary, it's urgent. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video if you found it engaging, and share it with your friends to support our content. You can also donate to support us in creating more compelling content. Your contributions go a long way in helping us continue to share stories and raise awareness. Thank you for your support.